Hi there, folks. My name is Jeremy Siskind. I'm the author of the Jazz Piano Fundamental series, the book Playing Solo Jazz Piano, which has its second edition. And actually, today's little video, is going to be taken from the pages of Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 3. One of the things that I enjoy doing in the books is having frequently asked questions, and a lot of these questions come from classes that I teach and actual questions from students. Other times that frequently asked questions box is like just my little way of experimenting with something that maybe isn't part of the main material. It doesn't justify its own section, but I feel like it's worth saying. And that's exactly what the case is today. I want to talk about triad pairs voicings. This is not anything I was ever taught having gone to jazz college. Maybe it's not a thing. Maybe I invented it. Probably not. Probably somebody got there before I did. But I think it's a kind of cool voicing to experiment with, and something that I've found myself using more and more. So how do triad pair voicings work? So first of all, I guess we need to understand the concept of triad pairs, which is kind of an important thing in modern jazz theory. So the concept of triad pairs is generally that, let's see, I didn't test this beforehand. Oh, thank goodness it works. If we're finding the diatonic triads in a key, of course, diatonic means without adding any extra sharps or flats to the key signature. So these would be the diatonic triads for a C major scale. And for any major mode, melodic minor mode, you can find, these triads that belong to the mode, right? C melodic minor has some really different kinds of triads, but you can still find all of the triads that are natural to the mode. Now, there's a lot of theory around triad pairs, so I don't claim that this is like the entire concept of triad pairs. But one thing that we do with triad pairs is that if we use two of those adjacent triads, then we're guaranteed to have a set of 6 notes with no notes repeated, right? I don't know why I went back to this camera angle. I have to go right back. So if we're back to C major and I choose C major and D minor here, right? That's going to have a set of 6 notes with nothing repeated. And so we can do a bunch of different things with that. We can alternate between the two of them. Something like that maybe. We can practice connecting between them. Right? And a lot of this is in the book if you're interested in learning more about triad pairs. But something else that we can do is we can stack them on top of each other to make voicings. And so let me explain what's going on in these diagrams here. And, like a preacher would say, open your hymnal. If you do have Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 3, this is page 92. Like I said, this is within a little frequently asked questions box about some modal voicings. And so I started with this example of B flat and C minor triad. So imagine maybe we're in B flat major. And so we're taking the triads based on the 1 chord, which is major, and the 2 chord, which is minor. So let's look at just the bottom line first. So we're going to look just at this part. So what's happening here is we're alternating between C minor and B flat major triads in ascending inversions. Okay, so it's C minor, then B flat in what we call first inversion with the 3rd on bottom. The 3rd chord is C minor again, this time in first inversion, and then we go to 2nd inversion for the 2 chords, and then root position. On top, we're doing the same thing, but we're not starting quite in the same place, right? Here, we're going to start on B flat major in root position, and then we're going to go up that same alternating pattern, going from root position to first inversion to 2nd inversion, and then back again. And so what's cool about each of these is that they each have 6 distinct notes, because whenever we have B flat on top, we have C minor on bottom, and we know because these are these adjacent triads within the key that they're going to have completely different notes. So we always have 6 different notes, and they stay in kind of nice close positions. So let me play this for you, and I'll tell you what, I'll let you see my hands. Arguably, some of these have nicer sets of intervals than other ones. I feel like I have to crane my neck. I would say in general, the ones with C minor on the bottom sound a little better than the ones with B flat on the bottom. But with different patterns, like it's not always going to be a major and a minor triad. Those calculations are going to change. And you can always pass through the ones that have the trickier intervals. Right, so I'm using all and only these triad pairs voicings. Have a clustery feel because we have 6 different notes in a pretty small, a pretty compact space. I think it's a very cool sound. So you're probably wondering, what kind of a chord could I use this with? And the answer would really be, assuming that, I hear this and I think that it comes from a mode of B flat major, we could use it with any chord that uses a mode of B flat major. So, it could be C minor 7 for C Dorian. It could be like D minor 7, flat 6. It could be E flat major 7. It could be F sus. Could be like kind of a weird G minor 7, flat 6 sort of a sound. And it could even be B flat major, although, we've got this E flat in there, so I don't know that we would necessarily use it all the time. But listen, if the chord is C minor, it provides a very specific sound against the C minor. It's not a generic C minor. But it's an option that I think is pretty cool. Let's look at this next example. It's really the same concept, but here we're probably thinking of some sort of a mode of D major. And in this case, I've selected 2 adjacent major triads. Now, this is actually really key to the concept of triad pairs, is that within any major or melodic minor mode, there's one spot that is going to have 2 adjacent major triads. And a lot of times, improvisers like finding those 2 adjacent major triads because they make a really bright sound playing them together. So just for instance, if we're thinking about old C major again, we would have triads based on the 4th and 5th that are both major and adjacent. So if I'm playing in D minor, I might kind of alternate melodically or harmonically to create this really modern kind of bright jazz sound. And so what this second example is doing is it's taking that concept of these 2 adjacent major triads, and it's saying, what if we stack these 2 up? And so it's going to be a different sound than a minor and a major triad, right? So same exact concept. We've got, an A triad, G, A, G, A, G, A, G, and then on top it's fitting together perfectly because we're going G, A, ga, 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 ga. This is Lady Gaga's favorite voicing. Ho, ho, okay. And again, we're going from root position to first inversion, the second inversion, etc. So this is going to sound a little different. I think it's going to be a little crunchier, a little brighter. All right, so some of may sound a little questionable, right? This very first one in root position, not necessarily great. Next one, much more interesting. Pretty cool voicings. And so again, here I'd be using these to comp with any chord based on a D major scale. So of course we could use D major. It would have to be kind of a sussy D major sound. E minor, definitely. F sharp minor, questionable. Definitely like something like G major 7, sharp 11. A7 or like A7 sus would be really cool. B minor 7 flat 6 I think would be really nice. Right, if that were the chord. You could hear that this allows you to make melodies. I don't know that this voicing offers you a lot if you're just plunking it down. But I think where it does get really cool is where you play melodies and really bring out that top note. Okay, so I think you're getting a good understanding of triad pairs voicings. You might be wondering, like, what context would I use this in? I would use it mostly on a modal context where you're staying on one key center for a longer period of time. If you're playing bebop and playing a lot of 2-5-1s, these voicings probably aren't going to make a lot of sense. But if you're playing So What, if you're playing a Wayne Shorter tune, I think you'll find some interesting places to use this. Now, one final thing I want to say, which is kind of just a hint at some things to come on this channel and with these voicings, is that the way that I've given them to you, they're kind of in their tightest form without overlapping, right? So I've got my A triad here, I've got my G triad there. Same thing as we go into inversions. The thumbs are always going to be as close together as possible, often just one step away, right? Almost always they're just a step away, except for right there. But what you can also experiment with is putting these chords into different inversions. And you could, let's keep the left hand where it is, move the right hand. I could move the right hand up so that there's more space in between the thumbs. Can you see now it's not a step in between the thumbs, it's like a fourth or a fifth. A more sharp, bright, angular sound to me. But what's even more interesting to me, again, if I keep the left hand where it is, instead of putting the right hand here, I could actually put the right hand lower so that now the thumbs aren't just closed, they're actually interlocking or overlapping. I've become obsessed with this kind of voicing. And I know it's kind of silly because you're like, well, why don't you just play the bottom notes all with your left hand? Why don't you play the top notes all with your right hand? But the ability to bring different notes out in different ways and to feel these triad shapes is really important to me. Like, I could never memorize these voicings if I had to find, 3 bottom notes of 2 where belong to one triad, one belongs to the other. Like, I'd never be able to remember them. This just feels so nice and thick. It's like really a thickened line. It's very clustery. This is something that I feel like, I don't know if Bill Evans would play necessarily, but very possible. And just in case you're not getting what I'm talking about in terms of my hands, look at the way, let's see, I'll start here. Just like this. makes things really interesting. Of course, there are some moments where it's difficult. It's, your hands start getting in one another's way. They're pulling against each other. You're trying to move them and the thumb's in the way. But I think it's worth experimenting with. All right, guys, I'm out of time. I take too much time there. But I hope you enjoyed learning about triad pairs voicings. I think they're really, really cool. And if you like that kind of thing, like leading in that modal direction, Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 3 has like so much information about triad pairs, pentatonics, how to play outside of the changes. I think you'll find a lot of stuff that you like there. All right, everybody. If you watched all the way to the end, why don't you say something about Gaga? Could be about Lady Gaga. Could be about something else related to Gaga because of our little G-A-G-A chords. All right, everybody. I'll see you later.